The forest seemed to hold its breath as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a soft glow that painted the leaves in shades of gold and amber. Angela tightened her grip on her son Nico's small hand as they navigated the narrow path through the woods. This was their sanctuary, a place to find peace after long days of worry and work. Nico's laughter rang out as he darted ahead, his backpack bouncing. "Mama, look!" he shouted, pointing to a gnarled root that snaked across the path like a creature frozen in time. Before Angela could reply, he stumbled, landing hard with a cry. She hurried to his side, her heart hammering. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling as she brushed dirt from his cheek. He shook his head, though his eyes glistened with unshed tears. She kissed his forehead and smiled, relief flooding her. Then, like a sigh from the earth itself, a sound rose from beneath the roots, faint, broken yet unmistakable. A voice, cracked and desperate, whispered, "Please, help." Angela's breath caught in her throat. She scanned the ground, expecting nothing but shadows. But the voice came again, a shivering tremor in the still air. Nico's wide eyes mirrored her own shock. "Mama, did you hear that too?" he asked. She nodded, pressing a finger to her lips. Kneeling, she brushed aside the fallen leaves and cold soil, her hands trembling as she dug. Her fingers struck something hard, a rusty metal grate hidden beneath the roots. Heart pounding, she leaned closer. "Hello?" she called. A faint groan answered, then a voice so weak it barely carried. "Water. Please." Without thinking, she reached into her pack and unscrewed a small water bottle, pouring its contents through the grate. The sound of desperate gulping filled the silence. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. We'll get you out." She worked quickly, scraping at the earth with her hands until her nails cracked and her palms bled. Nico watched, his small face set in determination. He handed her a stick to help, and she used it like a lever, prying at the roots and soil until, with a final heave, the old hatch creaked open. A wave of warm, musty air escaped, carrying with it a sharp, metallic scent. She coughed, blinking back tears as she peered into the darkness. A man lay inside, his skin pale, his clothes torn and stained with dirt. His eyes fluttered open, glazed and unfocused. She reached for him, her voice calm though her heart raced. "Give me your hand," she urged. "Come on, I've got you." He managed to lift his arm, but it fell limp before reaching her. She reached deeper, her fingers closing around his wrist, and pulled with all the strength she had. Bit by bit, he emerged from the earth like a ghost reborn, each breath ragged and pained. She laid him on the ground, her breath coming in ragged gasps. He tried to speak, his voice a rasp. "I used to have a family," he whispered, "but someone I trusted left me here." His head rolled to the side as his eyes closed. Angela felt for his pulse. Still there, but fading. She rapped. Him in Nico's rain poncho, her mind racing. There was no time to wait. She looked at Nico, his eyes wide but steady. "We need to get him home," she said. Nico nodded without hesitation, his small hands clutching hers. Together they lifted, the stranger supporting his weight between them. The forest loomed around them, dark and silent, yet Angela felt something shift inside her. She didn't know who this man was or why he had been left to die, but she knew she couldn't leave him behind. As they made their way back through the darkening woods, she felt a spark of resolve. Whatever story lay hidden in that whispered pain, she would uncover it. She had to, because something in that man's broken voice had reached a place in her heart she had thought long sealed away, and that was only the beginning. The cottage at the edge of the woods felt smaller than ever as Angela and Nico guided the stranger inside. They laid him gently on the worn-out couch, its cushions sagging from years of use. The man's breathing was ragged, his chest rising and falling in shallow waves. Angela's hands shook as she fetched a damp cloth from the kitchen and pressed it to his forehead. Nico hovered nearby, his eyes full of questions he hadn't yet asked. She knew they would come. But for now, there was only the man, this fragile life that had emerged from beneath the forest floor. Is he going to be okay, Mama? Nico's voice was small, but his concern was vast. Angela met his gaze, choosing her words carefully. We're going to do everything we can, she said. It was the only truth she could offer. She cleaned the man's wounds as best she could, the smell of earth still clinging to his clothes. Underneath the grime and blood, there were deep lines of pain etched into his face, a story waiting to be told. Every time his eyes flickered open, they filled with confusion, then slipped back into darkness. Angela sat by his side long after Nico had fallen asleep in his bed. The night outside pressed against the windows, carrying with it the rustle of leaves and the hush of wind. She thought of the voice that had reached her from the ground, that desperate whisper. She leaned closer. "Who are you?" she whispered, even though she knew he might not answer. His lips parted, but no words came. Instead, a memory surfaced. A name. Leo. She didn't know if it was his real name or a fragment of something long lost. But it was, enough to make him feel human. Leo, she repeated softly, as if the name itself might keep him here. You're safe now. She thought of calling someone, but what would she say? That she'd found a man buried alive in the woods? The thought made her stomach twist. Without proof, without answers, she feared they'd take him away before he even had the chance to heal. The hours crawled by. She dozed in a chair by his side, jolting awake each time he stirred. The pale light of dawn crept into the room, painting his face in soft hues of gray and gold. He blinked, his eyes clearer than before. Where am I? His voice cracked like old wood. You're in my home, Angela said gently. My son and I found you. You were trapped underground. Do you remember? His brows furrowed, confusion clouding his face. I was with someone. I thought I could trust them. His breath hitched, a tremor of pain beneath the words. Angela reached for his hand. It's okay. You're safe now. No one can hurt you here. His eyes searched hers as if weighing her words. Thank you, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I thought I'd never see the sun again. Angela felt her heart tighten. There was so much she didn't understand, but she knew one thing. This man had survived something terrible, and now he was here, in her care, bound to her by an unspoken promise. Outside, the world slowly woke, but inside the cottage, time seemed to pause. The past might have buried Leo in darkness, but Angela knew she had a chance to help him find the light again. And perhaps in saving him, she would find something long buried in herself too. The morning sun broke through the trees, warm and forgiving. Angela looked at Leo and thought of all the questions that would come. Questions she would have to face. But for now, she let the silence between them settle like a fragile truth. Whatever had happened before, they were both survivors now, and the road ahead was theirs to walk together. Angela moved through the small kitchen, her hands working on autopilot as she prepared a simple breakfast. The smell of toasted bread mingled with the scent of damp earth still clinging to Leo's clothes. Every so often, she stole a glance into the living room where he rested, pale but stronger than the night before. His eyes tracked her movements with a mixture of weariness and wary hope. She carried a plate of scrambled eggs and set it gently on the coffee table. Try to eat, she urged softly. Leo struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement, but managed to bring the fork to his lips. His hands trembled, and Angela watched the way his eyes flickered over the small space, taking in the modest furniture, the family photos on the wall. Her life laid bare. Thank you, he murmured, his voice rough but more certain. You didn't have to do this. Angela shook her head. Everyone deserves a second chance, she said, more to herself than to him. I couldn't leave you there. Leo paused, fork halfway to his mouth, his eyes darkening. I didn't think anyone would come, he said, his voice lowered. The one who left me there. I thought I could trust him. I thought he was my friend. Angela leaned forward, her curiosity stirring. Who did this to you? She asked. He closed his eyes, as if gathering strength. His name was Marcus, he whispered. We built everything together, business, investments, plans for the future. I thought he was like a brother, but greed, it changes people. He saw what I had and he wanted it all. Angela felt her heart constrict. Betrayal by someone you trust. It was a pain she understood too well. She reached for his hand. You don't have to go back to that life, she said. You're safe here. Leo's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of gratitude and fear. I wish I could believe that, he said. But Marcus won't stop until he knows I'm dead. He's dangerous. He has people, money, influence. His voice broke. He buried me alive. I thought that was the end. Angela's mind raced. She thought of Nico, asleep in his room, of the quiet life they'd built on the edge of the woods. Bringing Leo here had been an act of compassion, but now it felt like she'd invited danger into their home. But looking at him, this broken man who had been left to die, she knew she couldn't abandon him. Then we'll make sure he doesn't find you, she said, determination hardening her voice. We'll figure it out. You're not alone anymore. Leo's eyes softened, the walls around him crumbling. I don't know how to thank you, he whispered. Angela smiled, though her heart trembled. Let's start with breakfast, she said, one step at a time. The day stretched on, filled with cautious conversation and small acts of care. Leo told her about his life before everything fell apart, the dreams he'd chased, the people he'd trusted. Angela listened, feeling his story settle into her bones. By afternoon, the sun warmed the cottage, and a fragile sense of normalcy returned. But in the quiet moments, Angela felt the weight of what she'd invited in, a past that could still find them, a threat that might shatter their fragile peace. She knew the journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but as she watched Leo rest, she promised herself she'd stand by him, because sometimes the people we save are the ones who save us too, and in that promise, she found the strength she didn't know she had. Nico's laughter filled the small cottage as he ran from room to room, his backpack bouncing like a loyal companion. Angela smiled at the sound, her heart swelling with the simple joy of his presence. For a moment, she let herself believe that life could be normal again, even with Leo's presence in the living room, a fragile reminder of the darkness that still loomed. Leo had begun to regain some strength. Though his movements were slow and deliberate, his eyes were clearer now, his words less hesitant. He sat by the window watching the sunlight dance on the trees beyond. It's peaceful here, he murmured, his voice carrying a note of wonder. I never realized how much I missed that. Angela joined him, setting a steaming mug of tea on the table. Peace can be hard to find, she said softly, especially when the world tries to take it from you. Leo nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of the mug. Marcus took everything from me, my business, my friends, my sense of safety. He wanted it all, and when I wouldn't give it to him, he tried to bury me. His voice trembled. Literally. Angela felt the anger rise in her chest, hot and fierce. He won't find you here, she said, her voice firm. I promise. Leo looked at her, a flicker of hope in his eyes. How can you be so sure? Angela took a breath, her mind racing. Because I won't let him, she said. I fought for everything I've built, and I won't let anyone take that away. Not for me, not for Nico, and not for you. Leo's gaze softened, the lines of worry easing for a brief moment. You're stronger than you think, he whispered. Most people would have walked away. Angela shook her head, her voice low but certain. Maybe once I would have, she admitted. But Nico changed that. Being his mother, it taught me how to fight for what matters. Leo reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. Thank you, he said, his voice catching. for giving me a chance to live again. A sudden noise from outside made them both jump. Angela's eyes darted to the window, her heart leaping. A car engine idled just beyond the trees, its low rumble breaking the fragile calm. Leo's face paled, his hand tightening on hers. "It's him," he whispered. "I know it is." Angela felt a surge of protectiveness, her mind already whirring with plans. "Stay here," she said, her voice a whisper of steel. "I'll handle this." She slipped on her worn jacket and stepped onto the porch, her eyes scanning the tree line. The car's engine cut off, leaving an eerie silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. Footsteps crunched in the underbrush, a slow, deliberate approach. A man emerged from the shadows, his suit immaculate, his hair slicked back in a way that made her skin crawl. His smile was thin and cold. "Angela, is it?" he asked, his voice too smooth, too practiced. "I'm looking for a friend of mine. Maybe you've seen him." Angela met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I don't know who you're talking about," she lied, her voice steady. He tilted his head, studying her. "I think you do," he said, his tone soft but edged with threat. "And I think you know it's in your best interest to tell me." Angela's mind raced, every instinct screaming to protect Leo and Nico. She squared her shoulders, meeting the man's cold stare. "I'm afraid I can't help you," she said. "Now I suggest you leave." His smile widened, though it never reached his eyes. "I'll be back," he promised, his voice a low, dangerous purr. "And when I come back, I expect answers." Angela stood her ground as he turned and disappeared into the trees, her breath coming in ragged bursts. She knew now that Marcus wouldn't stop until he found Leo, and that their quiet life had just become a battleground. She went back inside, her hands trembling, but her resolve stronger than ever. Leo looked at her with wide, fearful eyes. "Was it him?" he asked. Angela nodded, her voice a whisper. "It was." He swallowed hard, his face pale. "What are we going to do?" Angela took his hand in hers, her grip firm. "We're going to fight," she said. "And we're going to win. Because he underestimated us." The fire that burned in her chest was brighter now, fueled by a promise. She would never break. No matter how dark the night, she would protect her family and the man who had become a part of it. The wind rattled the windows as the storm rolled in, dark clouds twisting above the treetops like restless spirits. Angela sat by the fire, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, steam curling in the dim light. Across from her, Leo stared into the flames, his eyes reflecting 1,000 unspoken fears. "I used to think I had all the answers," he said quietly, his voice almost lost to the crackle of burning wood. "I thought money and power made me untouchable, but that was a lie. Marcus knew my weaknesses, and he used them to bury me alive." Angela's heart ached at the rawness in his voice. She reached out and laid her hand over his, feeling the tremor beneath his skin. "You're not that man anymore," she whispered. "You're here. You're fighting to live again. That's what matters now." Outside, the storm's fury built with every passing second, rain drumming a harsh rhythm against the roof. Angela's mind churned with plans and half-formed strategies. She knew Marcus would come back, and when he did, he wouldn't come alone. Leo looked at her, a spark of determination in his eyes. "You don't have to protect me," he said, his voice steady despite the shadows beneath his eyes. "This is my fight too." Angela shook her head. "We protect each other," she said. "That's how we survive." Nico padded into the room, his small feet silent on the wooden floor. He carried a flashlight in one hand, his face set with a seriousness that made Angela's heart tighten. "Mama," he said softly, "I heard the car again. It was out there, near the trees." Angela's pulse quickened. She exchanged a look with Leo, unspoken fear passing between them. She rose from her chair, gathering every ounce of strength she had. "Okay," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "We're not going to let them scare us. We're stronger than they think." Leo stood, his face pale but resolute. "I'll help you," he said. "Whatever it takes." Angela moved to the old wooden cabinet by the door, pulling out a small flashlight and a rusted wrench. Makeshift defenses, but defenses nonetheless. "Nico," she said, turning to her son, "I need you to stay here, no matter what happens. Lock the doors behind us. Can you do that?" Nico's eyes filled with worry, but he nodded bravely. "I can do it, Mama." Angela squeezed his hand. "You're my hero," she whispered. She and Leo stepped out into the storm, the wind tearing at their clothes. The darkness swallowed them as they made their way toward the edge of the woods, where the car had been. Every shadow seemed to shift and breathe, the night alive with unseen dangers. They moved cautiously, hearts pounding, until they reached the spot where the car had idled hours earlier. The ground was slick with rain, tire tracks still visible in the mud. Angela crouched down, studying them, her breath coming in quick bursts. "He was here," she said, "and he'll be back." Leo crouched beside her, his expression grim. "He won't stop until he gets what he wants." Angela looked at him, her eyes hard with resolve. "Then we make sure he doesn't get it." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the trees and casting long shadows across their faces. In that brief, blinding flash, Angela saw not the man who had been buried alive, but the man he was becoming. Stronger, braver, determined to fight for his life. And she knew she would fight beside him, because sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the one we're born into. Together they stood in the storm, ready for whatever the night would bring. The night air was sharp and cold as Angela and Leo made their way back to the cottage. Their clothes were damp from the rain, and every creak of the wooden steps felt like a warning. Angela's mind raced, but she forced herself to stay focused. She had to. Nico needed her, and so did Leo. Inside, the glow of the small lamp cast a warm light across the living room. Nico sat on the couch, clutching his stuffed rabbit to his chest. His wide eyes darted to Angela the moment she walked in, relief washing over his face. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice small but fierce. Angela crossed the room and wrapped him in a hug, holding on as though she could shield him from the world. "We're okay," she murmured against his hair. "We're safe." Leo stood by the window, his gaze locked on the darkness beyond. His hands were balled into fists, but his expression was no longer just fear. It was resolve. "Angela," he said, his voice low. "We need a plan. Marcus won't stop. He's going to come back, and when he does..." Angela turned, her arms still around Nico. "We fight," she said. "Not with anger or revenge, but with the truth. We'll go to the authorities, bring them here, and show them everything. We can't do this alone." Leo shook his head, his eyes haunted. "He's too powerful," he whispered. "He has people in his pocket, police, lawyers, anyone with a price." He rubbed a hand over his face, the weariness settling on him like a shroud. "I don't know if there's anyone left to trust." Angela's heart clenched at his words, but then she thought of the life she'd built, the honesty, the resilience, and she refused to give in to fear. "Then we find someone who can't be bought," she said. "Someone who still believes in justice." Leo lifted his head, the flicker of hope reigniting in his eyes. "And if we can't?" he asked. Angela met his gaze, unflinching. "Then we keep fighting, because even in the darkest moments, there's always a way to stand up." Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. The storm had passed, but the night remained thick with tension. Angela reached for Leo's hand, and he took it, no longer the man who had been left to die, but the man determined to live. The three of them huddled together in the small living room, a fragile family bound by courage and trust. Nico's breathing slowed as he drifted to sleep, his head resting on Angela's shoulder. Leo's eyes never left the window, watchful but calm. In that quiet moment, Angela knew their fight was far from over. But she also knew they would face it together, because that was the promise they had made to each other and to themselves. And in that promise they found something stronger than fear, the strength to keep going no matter how dark the night might get.